Hey guys, it's Katie here with Life the Mundane and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing our Read Aloud review. Every year throughout the school year, we do a lot of read alouds with our kids. And if you're not sure what I mean by read aloud, I just mean that we read stories out loud to our children. No matter how old they get, we'll continue to do this. And it is such a good learning experience. These are books that I read from my toddlers all the way to my older kids. Some are geared more towards older, some are geared more towards younger, but they can all glean and learn from the things that we read. So I'm going to share with you guys my top 4 favorites from this year that I highly recommend. And I'm also going to share with you guys the 3 books that we couldn't stand and one that we even flat out quit halfway through. So be sure to stick around. Let's get started. So I'm excited to be a part of this collaboration. I actually invited a bunch of other amazing homeschool moms to join in with me and share with you guys our favorite and our least favorites. And I'm hoping this will help you guys to build your read aloud list for next year and help you to have a whole list of awesome books instead of wasting your time on some of the ones that were not so good. So first, starting with our favorites, I have to say our very first book was a huge favorite in our house, and that was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You can't go wrong with C.S. Lewis. And I'll tell you a little hint for read alouds. One thing we love to do is we love to read aloud the first book of series, but we won't continue necessarily to read aloud the second, third, and fourth. And the reason for that is I just want to wet their whistle. I want to get them enticed and intrigued to dig in more for themselves. So I want to read the first book, get them hooked, and then hopefully they can pick up and read the rest of the series either themselves on their own time, or we provide audiobooks for our kids. So that's what they did. We read the first book of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and they went on to listening to all the audiobooks to finish up the series. And I just love being able to do that. We're able to get through so much more that way and have more variety in our year. And it's just exciting to see them get excited about those books. This book is obviously awesome for many reasons. You know, it has so many allegories and so well. It's such a great opportunity to talk to your kids about Christ and what he did for us and how you see those pictures in there. And it really helped make that real for my kids. And they loved all the action and adventure as well. The next one that was a favorite was The Trumpet of the Swan. All right, I will give a little clarification on this. This one does have, it's an older book. It's by E.B. White, which is the same author that does Charlotte's Web. And it was a really fun book about a swan who doesn't have a voice. And so he finds a trumpet to be his voice. And he goes to school and he learns how to read and how to write. And he has jobs, and it talks about how he finds his one true love. And it's just such a fun book about the swan. There is a father in there that is quite wordy, and sometimes he can be a little insulting. The father does refer to Lewis as being defective because he's a voice that doesn't work. Now, we took this opportunity to talk about, are we truly defective when we're different? Because we do have kids with special needs. And we talked about that. And I didn't feel like it ended in a derogatory way. The father really comes to appreciate his son. His son is able to go on and do so much more than any other swan. So I actually feel like it's a great book to read with kiddos with special needs to say, look, don't let that hold you back. You can do the things that God has set out for you. So we used it as a great discussion point, but I did want to bring it up because I know for some it could be very offensive, and or with that, if you don't explain it, I think it could be dangerous. But I think if you use an opportunity for discussion, it's a really great book, and it made me laugh out loud, which that's not typical for me when I come to reading. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. The third one is a little bit more serious, and that is one of our Heroes of History, Harriet Tubman books. We read this during Black History Month, and my kids were so sucked in. They loved this book, and they wanted all things Harriet Tubman. We actually didn't do another read aloud in this month. We usually do 1 to 2 a month, and we didn't even go to another read aloud because they wanted to do plays about Harriet Tubman. They wanted to do research on the Underground Railroad, and we did a whole unit study all based around Harriet Tubman that I had not planned to do because this one was so inspiring to them. So I highly recommend it. Again, another word of caution. Harriet Tubman's life was very hard, and the authors don't shy away from the hard stuff. It's part of their life. It's part of what made them who they are. So it's in there. The fact that she was bludgeoned in the head and that's why she had sleeping spells, that's in the book. But I feel like it's really important to talk to your kids about that and to have those conversations. But it can be a little intense. The first few chapters were very intense because it was talking about her time in slavery, and there was not as many wins in the story, but it's real life. So every chapter doesn't end with a win in real life. So what we did is we read those chapters closer together and faster. So instead of reading, one chapter a day or whatever, we read a couple chapters a day so that we could get to the more lighthearted part, which is really not lighthearted when you're talking about the Underground Railroad, but it wasn't as harsh. So, but anyways, I know that makes it sound like it's a bad book. It is so good. I cannot recommend this one enough. And when I asked my kids what their favorites were from this year, this one definitely, hands down, was the favorite. So I hope you guys will check this out, but just know you may need some discussion and you may want to hold it off for older kids if that's the case. I've done an interview with the author of these books. You guys can check that out in the video above or down in the description below. And she addresses why they put those kind of details in there and what their purpose is and all of that. I would encourage you to go check it out because it really will, I think, change your perspective a little bit on this type of literature and on this type of history. All right, so the fourth and final book of our favorites. There were so many favorites, but I had to pick just our favorites. That would be The Wizard of Oz. This one was another one where my kids just got really enthralled. They loved looking at it because they have seen the movie, and they loved going, wait a second, that wasn't in the movie. And we have a really, we always try to watch the movie after the book, typically. But I usually try to have the kids watch the movie after we read the book so that we can compare and contrast what we see. And they loved doing that with this book. They also loved learning the history of it. And afterwards, we ended up mapping out, if you guys saw on my Instagram, we ended up mapping out the land of Oz and where all the different kingdoms landed. And they've gone on to listen to the audiobooks of the other books in this series. So definitely would recommend this one. And it was a really fun read. Okay, so now to dishing to the ones we did not like. I'm going to go in order from liking least to worst. That doesn't work. Yeah, anyways, I'm going to end with the one that we didn't even finish. That's what I'm trying to say. All right, so the first one that was not my favorite, it wasn't inherently bad, but it wasn't my favorite, was Gooney Green. I got this book from Sunlight at a homeschool convention. They were passing them out for free, and I'm like, hey, free books, yay. It looked like a fun story. And it was, but it was uber annoying to read out loud, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. Gooney Green is this little girl with a wild imagination and shares all these ventures with her school class. And the reason why I think Sunlight passes it out, and this is a pro to it, is that throughout the chapters, as she's telling her wild adventures and crazy stories, they're pointing out different things like, see, class, that's the setting. The setting is where a story takes place. Or see, you need conflict in your story. And it's kind of laying out the parts of a story all throughout this book. So it's educational in that way. But Gooney Bird and the whole book is constantly full of kids interrupting because it's a story about a child sharing stories in class. So constantly different kids yelling out things and talking over each other. And one, that's annoying to me in person, let alone to read it out loud and try to track who is talking when and in what voice and in what inflection and whatever. It was just not a favorite. It was short, so thankfully we were only in it for like a week, but not my favorite. The next one was Stuart Little. Guys, it's by E.B. White. I love Charlotte's Web. And Trumpet and Swan made it into our favorites this year as well. So I thought, who can lose with Stuart Little? Oh my goodness, guys. Not my favorite. First of all, it is a series of short stories that very rarely are connected to one another, which is fine. But some of the chapters are connected to each other. So that was kind of hard to track. Why is this never referenced again? But this is. And then it ends legitimately on a cliffhanger. I won't ruin it for you or anything, but there are so many loose ends in this book that they don't even come close. They don't even try to tie it together. And it just drove me up the wall. And my kids were frustrated too. They said, well, where's the next one? And I told them, there isn't a sequel to this. And they were like, but, and I'm like, I understand. And it wasn't like they left you on the edge of your seat and you're wanting more. It was more like, how can that be the end? It'd be like if somebody cut it off right in the middle of the story, is what it felt like. And so I didn't like it. I know it's a classic. It's from one of my favorite authors, but it had to go. So what is the book that we didn't even finish? Well, that one I don't even have a copy of, but I want to tell you guys about it. We decided, my mom has been reading to my kids. Nana has been reading to the kids. each week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, she reads them over a video chat because she can't see her grandbabies right now because of COVID-19. So she's been reading through. She read Little House in the Big Woods with the kids. They're reading Homer Price right now. And they've had a lot of fun reading with Nana on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. So they picked a book for a read aloud, and it was Harriet the Spy. My mom had never read it. I had never read it. We knew it was a classic. It's on the list of like 100 best stories to read to your kids kind of thing. And the kids thought because it was a spy, it sounded really neat. Anyways, she started out reading it, and she started pre-reading a few chapters like she typically does, and discovered that there was a lot of conflicting information here. There was Harriet is a little girl who is going on all these spy missions. So she does things like listening in on people's conversations, breaking into people's houses. She's constantly describing people in her notebook and referring to them as fat or ugly or stupid. She talks down about all of her friends. She back talks to like every adult. At one point, I think somebody that she's overhearing is talking about God, and she mocks it. And at first, when my mom pre-read the first chapter, she's like, I think there's going to be a lot of issues here. Are you okay if I go ahead, but we have good discussion? And I was like, I think that would be good. I think it's good to teach kids. I think it's important to teach our kids discernment, and it's important to teach them right from wrong. And if we only, ever read perfect stuff and good stuff, they're not going to learn that. And so I thought this is great, but then I got into it so much that there was so much discussion that needed to be done to really make this anywhere near worthwhile that it was not something that was good. And we felt like, because especially since we had younger listeners listening, they might only be picking up on the bad stuff and not really hearing the discussion, kind of tuning out the discussion. So we decided to ditch the book altogether, and I would highly recommend you not add it to your read aloud list. And I don't say that very easily. The other books, if you want to read them, it's very possible you will love them. But that one, I just really would recommend staying clear of, because we don't want our kids to emulate those things that they see in a negative way. And not every character in all these other books is perfect, but it's not glorifying the bad behavior. And after reading a bunch of reviews, my mom looked, and it does not appear that Harriet ever learns from those mistakes, or that those behaviors are frowned upon, or that she has consequences to those things. She kind of gets away with it. And so anyways, we just decided for us it wasn't a good fit. I would love to know what you guys' favorite read alouds or least favorite read alouds are, and be sure to check out the playlist with the collaboration of all the other people that are going to be sharing their favorite tops and knots. You guys are going to want to check that out. Be sure to stick around and subscribe if you like what you've seen so far, because I also have some really cool videos, one in particular that I'm really excited about, where I'm going to let my kids teach for an entire week whatever they want, and we're going to see what happens. So be sure to stick around and subscribe so you won't miss out on that video and other fun videos that are coming up, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.